Beastmaster is arguably the strongest offlaner in 7.28. So in today's video we're going to talk about how to play him. We'll talk about skill builds, item builds, micro, general gameplay ideas. Let's first of all talk about the skill build. So this is the standard thing you want to do. You want to just max out your Call of the Wild right away. This is generally your most powerful ability. You want to get this ASAP. Then you get the aura as a secondary skill. You don't get the axes in the early game because you just don't have enough mana to handle both Call of the Wild and the axes properly. So we leave the axes for last. And we get raw whenever possible, obviously. And as far as the talents go, we go usually for the movement speed. It's generally a bit better than the damage. But damage is not bad. And for all the talents, there's always both options. It's always situational. There's no like bad talents here. But generally speaking, usually when I go for the movement speed at level 10, the mana regen at level 15, just because we need that mana regen once to actually have the axes. You want to go for the armor if you like doing really badly in a game. Or if for some reason you don't have mana problems, like let's say you have a bunch of mana boots on your team, or like a Crystal Maiden or something like that, that just solves your mana problems. But generally you want to go for the mana regen. And then level 20, usually the bow damage is better. But there are some games where your bows just don't do very much, just die very often. Then you go for the axe damage instead. And then level 25, it's very much up in the air. Both of these are pretty good. It depends on how much your control units are actually doing and how much this attack speed is benefiting the rest of your team. This is like a 50-50 decision in 25, I would say. There's one major reason for deviating from the skill build. So we're facing a Chen, Enchantress, or Naga. You want to actually start with axes. The reason, obviously, if you're playing as Chen or Enchantress, they can just take over your bow and then you're in a pretty sorry state. And if you're playing as Naga, she has a lot of ways of dealing with the bows. Bows die very quickly to her. If there's some sort of disable from her lane partner, she can very easily kill your bows. And also she has so much armor that the bows don't really do very much against her. But conversely, the axes, because the magic damage, actually kill Naga illusions pretty quickly. So facing one of these three heroes, you want to start out with the axes. And then at level 2, it's kind of up in the air. You can either just get a single level in the inner beast aura, or you can just go for the bow. You don't really want to cast this too much, but thing is, the aura is not that good in the early game if you don't actually have bows. So most of the time, we're actually just going to get this at level 2, and then we get the second level in axes, and then they usually just max out our Call of the Wild. Because even though the axes is what we're going to use in the early game for laning, we still eventually want this maxed out fairly soon. So if we go for this, we can still get this maxed out at level 7. If you're like really concerned about the lane, you can also get third point in wild axes. But typically we're just gonna go like this. We get our ultimate, and then when we're level 7, we still have this maxed out, so we still have the same sort of early mid-game power, but just lacking a little bit of attack speed. But this is gonna give us a better lane against these 3 specific heroes. Now let's talk about item builds. So at the start, you want to have plenty of regions. So for example, you can buy this as the start. 1 tango, 1 salve, Falling Bill of course is a must, and then 3 mangoes and a branch. This spends all your gold at the start. And the reason we buy this mango is not so much for the mana regen, although that is going to come in later, but mango is actually pretty efficient healing item. They're actually more efficient at HP regen than the Ring of Regen. The Ring of Regen costs 2.5 times as much as a mango, but it actually gives less than 2.5 times as much HP regen. And then eventually we're going to use those for mana, because at the start, if you don't go for the Axis build, you actually have not that much mana problems. So we actually want to go for this, and then we go for Necro, and typically we start with the Belt of Strength, because we don't have that much mana problems at the start, because we're only using Call of the Wild, and we're not even really spamming out the Hawk, we just use that occasionally. Mostly we're just spamming the Boar. The mana is not that big of a concern at the start, but then once you reach level 6, when we want to use a Raw, then we really get into some mana problems. And so having those mangoes there is really helpful for some emergency mana regen. You don't have to go for the mangoes, you can also just get some more conventional regen items, but either way we want plenty of regen, and then we go for the Necro. In some lanes we might have to get boots early on, like if you're playing against an Ursa for example, but generally we just want to get Necro ASAP. Same for stick, if you're playing against a very spammy lane, get an early stick. But as far as possible, we want to avoid these other early game items and just go straight for our Necro, because that's such an important timing. So we go for the Belt of Strength first usually, and then we get the Sage's Masks. But if we went for the early Wild Axis build, then we want to get those Sage's Masks first. We might even get an early Ring of Basilius in that case, which is going to help us spam our Axis more, and that then can later be used for a Vlad's, which is a pretty good Beastmaster item. So after Necro 1, we generally want to get our boots and wand, or at least stick, in most of the time, because we do want to get active once we're level 6 and have our Necro. But we also want to look out for our farm, because we do want to get a good timing on that Necro 3. But most of the time at this point we're going to get the boots and a wand, and then we continue on to Necro 3. At this point, or on the way towards Necro 3, we might also throw in some small item, like maybe a raindrop, some extra protection, some extra mana, or we might get something like a wind lace. They're all fine items, but we don't want to spend too much gold on other items, because you want to get that Necro 3 timing ASAP, because it's such a strong item in the current patch, and especially on Beastmaster. But this is the general setup we want to have in the mid game. It's also possible on Beastmaster to go with Corrosion. It's not a bad item. The problem is just when you get it. You don't want to delay your Necro 3, and after Necro 3 it's a bit late for that kind of item. You're not actually hitting people with Beastmaster all that much in fights in later stages of the game, so I generally want to skip this. The same is true for these boots upgrades. So there's also the different boots we can go for on Beastmaster. Phase boots is like a great boot on Beastmaster. The problem is we don't want to delay our Necro 3. Treads, also a fine choice, but again, we don't want to delay our item timings. We can also go for Tranquil Boots, sort of the cheapest upgrade. That still gives us some nice utility, some nice regen. But oftentimes we're actually just going to stick with brown boots and eventually upgrade them to Boots of Travel in the late game. At this point, after Necro 3, our options are really wide open. There's a whole lot of different things we can do. But generally speaking, especially once we have that Necro 3, we want to group up with our team. We want to push, we want to take towers, we want to take Roshan, things like that. And so one item that really helps with that is Vlad's. This is especially good if you had a strong early game, if you can push properly with our team. If we're ahead, we want to play high tempo DotA, then Vlad is great for that extra sustain. It also synergizes quite well with our Inner Beast aura. So Inner Beast is attack speed aura, this gives a damage aura. So that's the obvious synergy there. So this is a strong option. Blink Dagger is also great for initiation. Problem to watch out for though is that Blink Raw is not that great against heroes that have a way of reacting to that instantly. So if you're playing something like an Anti-Mage or a Slark, because Prime Raw has a pretty long cast time, these heroes can actually react to our Raw, because it takes so long to cast. So an Anti-Mage something can just throw on his shield and return our Raw. So against these heroes, Blink Tag is not actually that great, but it's a good initiation tool in most cases. Other great items include Solar Crest, especially powerful if you have like a strong +1 hero that really benefits from this. So we get him lots and lots of extra attack speed with our Beast Aura and the Solar Crest. Also, these sort of protective aura items are a strong option on Beastmaster, like Crimson Guard and Pipe of Insight, depending on what kind of damage your opponent's team does. Heaven's Halberd, also a strong option, just makes you a bit tankier and allows you to take out an enemy right clicker for a couple of seconds. And then BKB, obviously also a very powerful option. This is an item that we almost always want to get eventually if the game goes on long enough. When to get it is very situational. There's some games even where we just want to get this second item after Necro 3. If you want to, especially if you're having a good game and we can get this like an early timing and we can sort of overrun the enemy team with an early BKB. That's often quite strong if you're snowballing. But also just generally at some point you want to get this just to be able to survive in fights, because Beastmaster is not actually all that tanky, even though it's a strength hero. And then there's also the Aghanim Shard. So what the Aghanim Shard does is it makes our Hawks able to be controlled, they move freely, and they're still always invis, and you can also use this Dive Bomb that sacrifices the Hawk to deliver a single target stun, as well as doing some damage. So this is actually a very powerful option. The problem though with this ability is that it's actually quite hard to play like this. You have to constantly reassign these control groups to have like these two Hawks in two different control groups, and it can get quite difficult. So especially if you're new to Beastmaster, I would recommend against getting this shard. But if you're really comfortable with Beastmaster Micro with multitasking, this is an incredibly powerful option. Gives you so much more vision, as well as that extra stun. As far as the more late game luxury kind of items go, Boot of Travel is an obvious choice because it allows us to TP to our Hawks and to our bows. And for the same reason, also just in general, if you have a Beastmaster in your team, Boost of Travel becomes stronger for your teammates. So this is a very powerful option, but we don't want to rush this because we want to actually just push straight up with our team in the mid game. And this is just like 2000 empty gold that don't actually help us for straight up fighting. Other great items, AC is a perfectly fine item. We're gonna Beastmaster, some extra armor, some extra attack speed aura. Especially if you have a blink. Scythe is a really powerful upgrade, allowing us that instant initiation. So this sort of solves the problem with the raw, because it's not instant, so you can just go in there, hex summon, it's instant initiation, and then we can get off the raw without the opponent having any sort of chance of responding. So this is a very strong combination. If we didn't go for a blink dagger, then the Abyssal Blade is probably the stronger luxury item. It's also just an extra stun, like Primal Road also pieces BKB, but it also sort of has this sort of initiation range in here. That's also an option. If you didn't get BKB earlier, now's the time. We always want a BKB at some point, and if you can get a 10-second BKB in the late game, that's very, very powerful. Also, another strong option if you have a blink dagger is to go for this overwhelming blink. This is basically just in case we already maxed out on item slots. Like let's say we have this, and we have the scythe, and then we also maybe in the early game we bought or the mid game we bought a Heaven's Halberd, and then already bought the shard. So now what's next item? Well, this is as just a natural upgrade, making use of our slots. So yeah, don't get this early on, but it can be quite nice for some extra damage and slow. How do we actually control Beastmaster? We definitely want to use control groups. If you don't know about control groups, they're here in the options menu and the hotkeys. I've set them up to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we have more control groups here in the advanced hotkeys, 5, 6. Just set these to anything that you want, and then you press, for example, Control 1, and then this Beastmaster and the balls are now set onto 1. So whenever I press 1, I can select Beastmaster and my balls. If I'm somewhere else on the map, I can also double click this, and then it will center on my Beastmaster and his balls. Then I have another hotkey on 2 for my balls. These are now on 2, so I have 1, 2. And then you also need a hotkey for your necros, especially the archer. So this one is going to be on 3 for me. And then if you have the shard, we also want to have control groups for hawks. We'll have one hawk on 4 and the next one on 5. The problem with this is that we constantly have to reassign hotkeys for the hawks, because you don't have both hawks on one control group. We're going to have a control group for each hawk, so they can move them around separately. So this is what makes the shard kind of tough to use. But as I said, if you're new to Beastmaster, just don't worry about it, just don't get the shard, it's fine. As far as the general game plan goes, in the early game you just want to trade with people with your balls. You're pretty strong early game stats, and as long as you have plenty of regen, you can usually have a good time in lane. Beastmaster is not a hero that does particularly well in like a 1 versus 2 situation, so you really want to have a 4 that's going to be in your lane most of the time, and sort of can trade well with the enemy team. And then once you have your Necro 1, you want to start putting some pressure onto the enemy tower, maybe take the tier 1 tower, and ideally you have someone else rotate to your lane. When you have your roll ready, then you can get a kill on the enemy carry, or you can also rotate to, for example, the mid lane to get a kill there. But generally you want to fight whenever you have roll, and you also don't want to neglect your own farm, because you do want to get a good timing on Necro 3. But then once you have Necro 3, this is sort of your most powerful part of the game. This is when you really want to group up with your team and just keep pushing. You want to take out all the tier 2 towers, take the shrines, you want to take Roshan, and then eventually go high ground. So this is the strongest part of the game for Beastmaster, and ideally you can just win it in the mid game. But if not, Beastmaster is still very decent later on in the game. You have this great aura for your other cores to boost their attack speed. You provide lots of vision with the hawks, and you have this powerful BKB piercing stun, so you're decent in the late game, but not all that tanky. So you have to be a bit careful in team fights. You don't go too deep, and don't die too much. So yeah, that's how you play Beastmaster. I hope you give this hero a try. In the coming weeks, I'm gonna make some videos covering example games of how to play Beastmaster. You know, how do you convert a 1 lane into a winning game? What do you do if the lane doesn't go that well? What do you do if you're behind? And that kind of stuff. So in the meantime, I'll leave you with this Lycan video, which is a hero that actually plays quite similar to Beastmaster. So if you enjoy Beastmaster, you're also going to enjoy Lycan most likely. So give that video a watch, and all is willing, I'll see you there.